Hello and welcome to Stampscapes Friday Night Live. We're going to go back in time here to the mid 90s when I started Stampscapes, 93, 94-ish, and we're going to do some compositions using the stamps that were available at that time. I was going to go and check out the website and see what designs were available in what I consider the first batch of designs. Let's see, but I didn't do that. So I think it went up to about number 82, which is Tall Rock with Falls. And I think, no, there was 84, which is the tonal applicator. 85, I don't know. It might have went up into the 90s. So there was a batch of about 90 designs in the first kind of full release of Stampscape stamps. And I think that was what I consider all the designs that went into that first catalog. All right. Okay, so I'm going to use some of these older designs in that first batch, and I'm going to use them kind of in the way that I that I remember using them at least. Okay, we're not going to go all the way back to just coloring the stamps with Marvy pens. That's going way too back, too far back, just for the sake of it. I did do a video where I did use the Marvy pens for making a scene and the tonal applicator. But dye-based inks and glossy cardstock, that's what I was doing at that time. And I did that for years, all right? That's what was kind of going on at the time. There were people that used matte paper, of course, but a lot of people used glossy, Posh Impressions was around, and she was doing a lot of promotion, and she did a lot of touring. And I think Suze Weinberg probably used a lot of the Marvy pens and glossy cardstock. So it was a lot of glossy going on back in the day. Hello, Mark, Linda, Bonnie, and Catherine. Good to see you. Let's see. Oh, you cooled down a little bit, Catherine, I think, right? 84. And watching storms coming up. Yeah. Hello, Jeannie. Jeannie, what's the temperature up your way right now? I know there was a little bit of a heat wave there, too. We're talking about Pacific Northwest, folks. I am in Southern California, in San Diego, and we haven't had it too bad yet. But I have heard of heat from all over the place, including other areas of California. Hot and humid in the Bay Area, I've heard. Where my wife and son are for one of his sporting events. He's not participating. He just went to spectate, so I'm not there for that. All right. Anyways, glossy cardstock right here. So back in the day, we were using Chrome Coat. There's different incarnations of Chrome Coat since then. There were different brands of glossy cardstock that came around that were really good. King James, for one, that kind of took over the industry. Crafting industry as far as a glossy cardstock to use, but I generally recommend Chrome Coat, which is a different formula from the Chrome Coat of these days, because it's a different company, and they used to use the branding, but it's excellent. Okay, so let me just show you. I'm going to use some crazy color schemes here. They're all going to be very bright and kind of, I don't know, you can call it exciting, maybe you can call it gaudy, but I would say less kind of sophisticated in terms of, what I'm always talking about in terms of brightness and intensity and things like that. But let's just go with a green color scheme, just because I have these pads all lined up from a couple of the recent scenes. But this is what I had people do in my classes. Okay, I'm not going to go with all of these. Let's just abbreviate the entire process here, because, that's what I was doing back then. But I would just have people line up their pens, and later on their pads, in a sequence from light to dark in any given color scheme or hue. Okay, so this is a warm green to dark green right here. All right, I haven't used this in years, so tonal applicator. Okay, it's just a bunch of dots, and just a real brief background. People were using cosmetic sponges to do sponging techniques, okay? They weren't using paper towels like that and stuff like I'm doing these days. But I don't know, people were doing all kinds of things, grabbing Nerf balls, you know what I mean? Maybe not the brand Nerf, but sponge balls and applying ink that way. Um, I don't know, there was a whole bunch of stuff being utilized in kind of a makeshift or make do rather type of process with the kind of the absence of rubber stamp specific accessories, okay? But all right, so I had this idea that all of my designs were kind of tonal. So I'd have a bunch, like a field of dots, and that was what I had at a Stamp in the Hand company. It was just kind of dots that kind of diffused on the edges. But after using that for a couple of years, I realized I needed to get in and out of things. So I kind of came up with this little pointed one, and I had all the dots uniform, because if you have isolated dots on the outside, they get really big, even though you want it to kind of transition out on the edge. But if you have, I learned later that if you had dots that are isolated instead of kind of petering out, they get huge, because when they press a mold, if it's a dot that's not supported, it gets much larger. And then when you stamp it, it gets much larger because there's extra pressure on that single dot. So you're kind of squishing down a dot and you're getting all the ink on the tip and all the way around it. So this is all kind of uniform like this. Okay, let's get into it here. Hello, everyone. Let's see. Cynthia, Catherine, Jeannie, Debbie, good to see you. Bonnie, good to see you. Had thunderstorms for the last 2 days. Well, that's good. Yeah, that kind of blows out the humidity and heat too. All right, I can't use this with the tonal applicator. It's just too crumbly and let me see, concave, right? Yeah, get mixed up between the concave and convex. All right, so let's not use that. Let me see here. I think I have a distress. Yeah, let's use this distress mustard seed. Ranger wasn't making inks at that time, but we'll not get that technical, okay? They were making inks, but they weren't making inks for the crafting industry. They were more of like your industrial ink type of company. Okay, so I'm just going to go for this general kind of tonal transitioning range in here, and I'll retain some area that's kind of light for my light source, okay? Now this is just one way to do it. I used to stamp my images first and work around it, but we'll just get some general tone in here, like so. Turn down your speakers if this is really going to be irritating. This is the type of thing that people always used to kind of joke about, that they always knew where I was at a convention, customers and other vendors alike, because I can always hear this going on at the demo table. And then if we had make and takes going on, there might be 6 people doing this. Okay. And I'm kind of doing it very lightly here. You know, it might sound like hammering at some point in time, you know, as people get kind of heavier and heavier handed with this. Okay, so I'm using this kind of on its side, all right? So it's, you know, if you're lefty, righty, it's the same type of thing right here. And this curve right here is going to give us that curved type of application. Now, if you want to go for more of like a fingers of light type of kind of excitement, then you go in like this with it, okay? And that, you know, a lot of people did that as well. But let's just go for kind of a mellow transition of tone here. So this is a stamp, but you, of course, you don't use it as a stamp. You're using it more as like a tool. Remembering rubber stamping from the past, yeah. 90s magazines, it was an exciting time in stamping, you know. Anytime anything kind of new came out, it was, you know, like, it's like revolutionary or something like that, you know, in stamping. A lot of it was kind of existing media or techniques from the art world, but, you know, in rubber stamping, a lot of people didn't go to art stores. They went to crafting stores, and a lot of that type of thing just wasn't seen. So, and let's see, in those 90s, it was Rubber Stamp Madness, National Stampographic, and then magazines like Vamp Stamp News came out, and the Stampington and Company magazines with the Stamper Sampler, and then Somerset Studio came out. Okay, so we're still trying to transition this, going from light to dark up there. All right, so that's my light source like that. And just like a paper towel, when it's drier, with the stamp right here, you stamp it drier in those areas where you want it to be lighter, and then where you want it to be more intense, you just add more on that surrounding area. There used to be this guy that taught classes out in Arizona, named Ken Pescio, a really great instructor, and just entire, I don't know, whatever, champion of the line. And he, I don't know when it was, but he was he still liked using the tonal applicator years later. It might have been what I taught him how to use. He used to come around to the rubber stamp convention in Carson with his wife. And he'd hang out at the booth. I started seeing him hanging out. And I remembered him because, for every, I don't know, 300 women, I don't know, 400 women, 900, I don't know what it was. It'd be like one guy, and they usually didn't stamp. I don't know if he was stamping at the time or not. He might have been doing some crafting, because I think he was telling me about how he used to go to, I don't know if it was Ben Franklin or something. It was one of those chains, I think. All right, so we're going to the green here, and it's like muscle memory. It's like riding a bike here. Let's see here. If I didn't say hello to someone, hello. But yeah, fun times. So speaking of all those things in the 90s too, and speaking of conventions, we saw a lot of conventions popping up in areas where there hadn't been any. So there was like conventions going on in California for a few years, or several years, almost not a decade. Well, I don't know. It might have been a decade. No, I don't think it was a decade. I think the first rubber stamp convention might have been around 1980. Maybe 82 or something like that. It was a few years before I started working for a Stamp in the Hand, and it was just this one store in the Los Angeles area that carried rubber stamps. And then what they did was they had I don't know what they called it, but it was like a parking lot kind of thing with a couple different rubber stamp manufacturers setting up their booth in the parking lot. I've seen photographs of it. My old boss from Stamp in the Hand had that. And then somewhere along the line, I think she asked if Kathy, my boss from Stamp in the Hand company, wanted to take it over, and she took it from there and moved it to Carson, California, because she lives in Carson. So it was at the Carson Community Center for years and years and years. All right, so we have this transitioning tone in here like that with two colors. Let's go to a darker green here. But yeah, so speaking of shows, there was, this one's an unusable tonal applicator pad too. Okay, this one looks good. See, these ones right here with this sticker thing on the top, that's probably a pad that's probably 10 years newer than my old gold embossed ones like that, which must have been extremely expensive for Marvy to make. All right, going in here like so. I got to be a little bit careful with this darker one, I think. I don't know, it seems to be going on okay. I don't want to get like shapes like this everywhere, okay? So again, you're just kind of tapping it like so. It's always interesting to see. I mean, I got used to it and I didn't really think about it too much. Other people would bring it up to me, but if I taught a class like at a convention center, and you use those meeting rooms, and they kind of accordion fold off the room into smaller rooms a lot of times, you know, that room divider. But other instructors, they weren't bothered by it, but they'd say, oh, you know, I definitely knew you were teaching next to me or something like that, or, you know, at the same time as their class. All right, so let's just go with that for right now. So we got a decent little kind of glowing, I don't know, it could be a horizon line or something like that, or something of that sort like that. God, it's kind of weird to see something like that after all these years. Let's see here. Blast from the past. Yeah, that's that, you know. So that's one of the things I really love about conventions. I didn't do a convention for many years, and then I went back to the Mesa, Arizona convention. Now I'd never done the Mesa one. I'd done Scottsdale before. But anyways, I started doing some conventions again because the guy that makes my rubber went to them, and he was going to stop doing them, and I just said, well, would you want to still do them if we shared a booth, you know? And you know, then we can share expenses too, like driving out there and hotel fees and everything like that. And he thought, okay, you know. So I started doing them again. But one of the fun things about kind of going to conventions is that you're in a room full of, I don't know if you've all been to conventions or if you had conventions in your area or whatnot. But one of the nice things about being at a convention is that it's just kind of interesting being in a room full of, I don't know, a few hundred people that are all into the same hobby as yourself. You know what I mean? So you have something in common with, you know, basically everyone there. There's usually not, I don't know, sometimes, you know, some stampers would bring, you know, and the stampers usually, you know, the woman in a couple, you know, except for Ken Pescio. But it's nice being, you know, it's like you speak the same language. So it's like if you're, you know, you want to get advice on a, you know, it's like, okay, well, what's the best pigmenting pad? You know what I mean? And everyone, you know, around at the demo table, you know, they have their favorites, their opinions, or, you know, they've tested everything out, so you can get every type of information on, you know, all the different things out there, and new things too. So I've heard about all kinds of things at conventions that I even never, you know, I wouldn't have heard about before. Yeah, that's, you know, I used to do workshops and stuff like that too in stores, and I would hear it that way. But you know, there wasn't a lot of stores in, you know, that are around anymore. So it was just kind of nice talking to a bunch of you know, stampers are hanging out with them all day. That's what this is fun for too. You know, I always say that in these live things, someone always knows, you know, the answer to just about anything in these live streams. If we have a question, stamp related or not. All right, so just adding these in black ink here. I really want to use my sedge filler, the grass texture stamp, but I didn't have that at the time, so I'm not going to use it here. I don't know. I say that, but I might want to throw in some things later on. When I'm done with these or done showing the the initial incarnations of them. Okay, so I was using going back to my media here back in the mid 90s. There were paint pens available at the time, usually like white ones. Marvy had one that was an oil-based one that was really good, and then Sakura had a pen, a white paint pen that was water-based. So one of them was really super opaque and kind of shiny, which was the oil-based one, and then the Sakura one was a lot more like it wasn't like the acrylic pens of today, although that was probably acrylic that I was using, but it was a little bit more translucent. So I don't know. You had a kind of a range of marks that you can use between the two of them. And this is pre-gel pens too, so we weren't doing anything with gel pens. The colored pencils have been around forever, and chalks, and but you can't use that on glossy cardstock. So it's pretty much dye-based inks and those two paint pens on glossy cardstock. Okay, so there wasn't a lot of things that you can really do here. That might have made for a kind of a more simple card and fast one, but I don't know. Every time I add something into the equation here in terms of media, I tend to not, if I like it, it tends to go into like, I don't know, almost all of the the future scenes that I do. So all right, so I'm wiping off the bottom of this a little bit, that shadow. Let me see. I need a little bit of that shadow in here. Okay, I'm gonna try to put this head so it's like right in that opening right there. Yeah, something like that. Hey, we're in the sequoias here. If this deer was like farther back in the distance, then the trees would change in scale by kind of reference, reference points. All right, so let's see here. I used to use this one a lot too, this leafless limb in the background. Let's use this one in, let's stamp this in like a green. Okay, which one can I use here? It was this one, I think. Yeah, the newer one. Now, I don't know if this pad is from... No, okay, so these pads... This pad came out in... I'm guessing the Marvy pads came out in 98? I don't know. I'm just taking a wild guess. 90... Yeah... Maybe 97 or 98. That's how I'm going to take a guess. I don't know if anyone knows the answer to that. But this pad might be from that time. All right, a couple background trees. All right, like I said, I'm going to try to do them a little bit lighter like that. That worked out pretty good. Do you notice how I kind of wiped off the bottom of this stamp right here? Just because I don't want a dark tree, it would look like, I mean, everyone would know that's kind of in the background there, but from a visual standpoint, it would look like that tree is just like a continuation of that deer's like antlers or so, or something like that. All right, so we got a couple of things in the background like so. All right. And now what we'll do is we'll go back in with the tonal applicator, and we'll add some shadows in here. It would be so much easier for me to do that with just with a paper towel here, but let's go ahead and use the tonal applicator, which is not hard or anything like that, but just I have more control over it when it's almost like I'm kind of finger painting in here. All right, so we'll kind of do it a little bit flared out from the distance like this. And here's where this little nose part comes into play. People weren't using alcohol inks either, but they were using Marvy La Plume, not the permanent La Plumes, that are alcohol like I use, but they were the water-based colors, probably the same inks as the Marvy 1600 pens, and that's the same color that are in these pads right here. Okay. All right, this is what I'm going to try to do here. I'm going to try to have a deeper shadow right here, but kind of taper it off to the left and right a little bit. I'm kind of adding the shadows, sacrificing some of the spotlighting that's on that deer right there, or elk, but so be it. Let me see. A polar bear died at the Calgary Zoo just now. Oh my gosh. Oh, you think it was the heat? But wouldn't they know that though? And, it seems like they'd be monitoring that. The Stampscapes tap, Cynthia. All right, let's go in with the black right here. I wasn't really, these. I wouldn't call this card kind of subtle, but I probably go for a little bit more or a lot more subtlety, in terms of stuff going on in the details these days, and more texture in foregrounds and things like that. Now, we're able to get a little bit more detailed now than before. All right, I'm using black here to kind of tip my edges right here. That's what I call it, is, just adding a vignette to the look. Like that. See, it kind of contains the scene a little bit more. Let's go up here. I didn't have overhanging leaves at the time of any sort. There was this one stamp called Foliage, but I really didn't use it for that. It's a really small design. All right, now I can put, like a cloud cumulus or something up there if I want to. And I did do that back in the day. I don't think I was doing it in multiple colors, though, in that first year or so. All right, so let's add in some extra foreground here, and that will be it, I think. Yeah, we'll just finish this one off. I might add some other, acrylic paint pen work or something like that later on, or On this one right here, I would color my trees with some alcohol inks. You know, if I were to do that today. I don't know, I might learn something from doing this though today. I don't know. It's like, oh yeah, I forgot about what something looked like doing it kind of in a real, I don't know, whatever, minimalist. If you call this minimalist, I don't know. But compared to today, you know. All right, so some reeds here. Back then, I would have put the larger leafless limbs right here in the foreground. Okay, this was my favorite foreground stamp back then. But these are too solid right here, so I mean, that wouldn't show up very well over the top of a black trunk like that, okay? So I just added this little foliage down below. So, but see this right in here, it can really use a little bit of extra shadow work and texture right in here. And that's where the sedge filler would come into play. But I don't know, I wanted to see, like I said, I wanted to see some things that I just haven't seen in a long time in terms of the look and technique of this. How far back does stamping go? Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. Hello, Janice. I don't know how far back stamping goes. There's a book on rubber stamping that goes into the history of it, and I think they talk about the Goodyear company, the tire company, with rubber making. I'm looking for that book right now. I picked it up in a used bookstore. It's probably on eBay somewhere. But yeah, it goes into the history of just rubber in general. You know, printmaking goes back, you know, really far historically, but yeah, I'm not sure how far back rubber goes, but relatively speaking, I mean, you know, as far as a medium goes, you know, it's not that far. Okay, so there's that right there, right? Let's go for something nuts here. It wasn't nuts back then, it was just like a regular scene, but I'll show you what a typical scene would look like in a make and take at a convention. Or you know, one of the first workshops. Okay, I'm gonna do some crazy color schemes here too, if I may. Let's go. So I used to do a lot of purples, I think. I don't know, or other people did in the workshops. Let's see. Okay, this is really old pad. Yeah, this pad's going to be useless for the darker range of this purplish color scheme. Look at this. See this plum here? It's like unused. I hardly ever use that color right there. It's a nice color though. Okay, so I don't have a lot of purples here. So what you do with anything is you can mix and match. Okay, so you can throw in your pinks. It's going to transition into purple. So I don't have like this value of violet here to utilize because my pad's like super crumbly. So if you know what, you know, the general color blending formulas to get those secondary colors, you can always just mix and match and blend. You know, you're not physically blending, but you're overlapping transparent color over transparent color. So a blue over the top of a pink is going to look violet. All right. All right, so, all right, let me go for something like a little bit more of like an explosive type of sky. I don't know. I just cleaned off my tag and peel. Look at this, how tacky this is. This is a really big stamp right here, but oh my gosh. That is really tacky. It's not all adhesive and it doesn't leave a residue or anything like that, but that technically feels like probably 10 years old. And you clean it off and it just like, it sticks like, crazy. Here's like a little piece right here. Look at this. It doesn't even come off my finger like that. All right. So let's do a little bit more of like this fingery type of explosion type of look right here. Okay, let's start. I don't know if this pink's. Yeah, that pink, I don't know. I'll see if I can use that pink in here. Oh my gosh, this one's the rosemary. So this one right, I don't know if I'll be able to do this color scheme. Well, here's a rose pink right here. These pads are just too old for some of this. But I can use them with the paper towel because I just dip into it like this. So if it's concave, it's no big deal. Let's see. How far back rubber stamping goes, and Google says 2020 AD in China. How would that be? But the answer to who was the first of everything, it seems like if you say, China, it's a good chance you're going to be right about that. It's like, it seems like 50-50, All right. Let's see. Conventions were fun, huh, Debbie? Let me see right here. Everyone remembers their first rubber stamping experience. I would ask that, yeah. I don't know. Does everyone remember their first rubber stamp experience here in the live? Now, for me, it was like this little set of stamps that I had as a kid that I've showed before, and someone found that I did a video of that set, and shockingly, someone sent me a link to that set. I don't think it was on eBay or something like that. I think it was just someone just posted it on the internet. Because I didn't know what company made it. And I don't know, I think I bookmarked it, but I've since forgotten again. It might have been All Night Media, though. But, yeah, I don't know. Does anyone remember? Has anyone been stamping since the, like the 80s in here? Or had rubber stamps? I don't know. If you got stamps, you might have picked it up at like a gift store or something like that if it was in the 80s. Stationery stores, something like that. My 30-year stamping anniversary is next year. You remember the date, too. I've always loved Ken Peschel's work with the tonal applicator. Yeah. Ken was awesome. All right, so I'm leaving these kind of fingery things in here. This is the lightest color, so I'm kind of questioning whether or not I should leave it. I was stamping over that little seam in this piece of paper right here, so I got a little seam here. Look at this. If I wipe this like that, that seems to work too. Okay, let me fill in a little bit more in here because this is the lightest color, and I don't know. I don't necessarily need white in here because I'm not using like my white pigment ink at the end, or I don't know. I could use the acrylic paint pen, but let's just get some coloring down in this live stream here. But see, this is how I'm using it down here. I'm going to I'll stamp out this stamp that's on this one, which is the old mill right here. So the bottom portion is going to be this stamp right here with this mill and this little stream. And then the sky will be this kind of fingery light type of thing going up there. So in here, I'm kind of going from the outside in using this pointy end like this. And then I see this, and then I'm giving it a little space and I'm coming into it like that. All right. And you start out in the edge like this, so you get more ink built up right here. So when you come in here, it's much drier, and you're getting this transition going from wet to dry and dark to light like that. And plus, see, if I go in like this, and I go right in here to start with, maybe not so much with this first color because it is so light. I mean, I could coax it into doing whatever I want, but you know, you stand to get kind of like isolated taps like this, or impressions like that. I mean, if you do, you just kind of blend them out a little bit by adding more and more on here, but you know, kind of when you go like this, it's, you know, you're not going to get that edgy type of shape showing in here. Let's see. Yeah, if you, I don't know, Debbie, do you remember your first stamp convention? You probably remember your first stamp convention you went to, right? Hello, Sharita. 1864 or 1866. Interesting how they got that exact date down like that. But it was Goodyear, right? Yeah, Sharita, you wouldn't have to think back, you know, decades, huh, for your first stamping. I don't know, but yeah, Sharita, did you know about rubber stamping, you know, for years? Or has that all been pretty new too? Okay, I'm gonna go kind of light down here. I just remember that little stream is going to be in here. We're not going kind of, you know, pink sky, purple, you know, violet sky, and whatever, green grass is down below, obviously, here. But if you just joined in, this is the tonal applicator, okay? It's a stamp that I used to do. Basically, it was, you know, the process of sponging color, you know, it was color application. But the thing about it is, as I'm inking this up on these pads right here, we weren't doing that before. You would ink up with your Marvy 50, is it 1500? Yeah, 1500 pens, brush markers like this. So we'd color it like this, not with a cap on, of course. And then you start applying that tone. So every time this went dry, you had to take this and color it up again like that. You know, in the old days of stamping, pre-stamp pads. There were some pads that were around. I think the Clear Snap Vivid pads might have been around at that time, 93-ish. Okay, but people were still mostly using pens. Okay. It's hard to think of using just pens for coloring all your stamps too with the imagery. But they just didn't have the raised dye-based ink kind of know-how until later on, you know, because, you know, if you have an ink pad, they were all recessed, you know, where the ink, you know, and you can't have it on its side or something like that. The ink's going to pour out, so it's like a reservoir of ink, you know. So they started doing either thicker stamp pads, like foam, like Marvy and Clear Snap did, or they went with thicker inks and used existing kind of fabric pads for the raised dye base. You could like, none of my pad, you know, stamps like this size would have fit into one of those recessed styles of pads anyway. So that's what, you know, and a lot of stamps back then were, you know, they're fairly large, so you just didn't see them used very often. And then you started seeing a lot more pads coming out. Rainbow pads from Abracadabra, which was, I believe, Stamp Francisco's company. I could be mistaken, because maybe there was Stamp Francisco rainbow pads too. I don't know. All right, so we're getting a little bit of variation like that. Kind of reasonably jewel tone. Look at that. See that texturing in there? You're not going to get that so much with like doing it with like sponging or paper towels or anything like that because it's getting much more saturated. With this, you were pretty much limited to what all these little dots here come in contact with. By the way, these are tiny little dots on here. This isn't solid right here. So in the early days of eBay, people would get a hold of something like this. I don't know, they picked up somewhere at picked up a lot of, rubber stamps somewhere or something like that. So this one was typically called a pear, They would say it's a pear stamp. And at the time, it was kind of funny because pears were kind of one of those things that were all the rage. Stamp in the Hand made a bunch of like pear stamps, and they were selling those like crazy. The hand carved look. Stampin' Up started in 1988. Oh, by two sisters. Okay, yeah, there were those companies. Let me see, in '88. All right, it wasn't Stampin' Up though, Candy, right? It was something else. It was like, it wasn't Dots, right? I thought it was a different company called something else. I thought they bought it or something like that, but I thought there was a name change or something like that. I don't know. Maybe that's on the Stampin' Up website, but I thought that was something else. Or Dots went into something else, though. The dozens of terrific stamps. And those companies, look at that blue in there. It's just like all violet looking. So this is just going over it with the salvia blue here. Yeah, that Stampin' Up got more people into rubber stamping than just about anything. Early days, it wasn't Stampin' Up or the home party ones. I don't know how people found out about stamping. It might have been stores or something like that, carrying stamps, maybe the bigger chains, but the rubber stamp stores started spreading like wildfire. And one of the most important, going back to conventions, I thought that one of the most important conventions around was Stamp Away in Cincinnati, or in the Cincinnati area. I don't think it's in the town of Cincinnati, but I don't know, sometimes the address is Cincinnati and sometimes it was something else. But that had people in the whole Midwest area coming out to it. Other people came out from all over the world to the Carson show, because it was just the biggest thing. Plus, all the different stores would go to Carson too, because people weren't doing like the wholesale shows a lot. So retailers would also make use of Carson. They even had a wholesale room at one point in time upstairs where vendors could have, a representative there taking orders from customers. All right. It's kind of weird for me to see this right here because I just haven't seen that. It almost looks like the cloud cumulus is in there. The texturing from it like that. It looks like I've stamped this out in a really light violet in there. All right, so we have something like that. Let me go a little bit more, I don't know, whatever light beamish ray type of thing. That got a lot darker up there than I thought it would too. I mean, these are all kind of like, I don't know, kind of pastel-y tones right here. But that tone up there is quite a bit darker than this salvia blue right here, but just, I guess, in conjunction with one another or layered like that, I'm not going to go to these two right here because that's going to get really dark. Let me see something right here, though. let me use this violet. I don't know if it's going to influence it at all. Yeah, it's a little bit darker. There was this kind of lazy Susan. I've mentioned this before, but anytime I start kind of twirling this around like this on my paper, sometimes I think about it. But, talking about like, when people were like innovating rubber stamp accessories or something like that. People, there was this one company that, it might have been good for something, but for some kind of usage, but they got a plastic lazy Susan, about yay big. You put your whatever spices on it or something like that in your pantry. So they took those, they bought a bunch of those, and then they drilled holes into it. And I think they had those, some kind of like toggle on them. They put like a rivet in there with like a couple those like metal arms, so that you can put your piece of paper down on there, and then you switch those metal arms around on here. They're just loose, like a clock hands or something like that. And then you can switch, the idea was that it's on the Lazy Susan so that you can spin your card around for application of media, in any direction or something like that. And when I saw that, I was thinking, well, I don't know. I just kind of go like this. I don't know if I need it on that Lazy Susan with these arms going across there to hold it down, or it was something like that, or it was like, it might have been two holes like this with like a rubber band going across it, so you put your thing underneath the rubber bands so that you can turn a card. I'm thinking, well, I don't know. It doesn't seem to. I don't seem to have any kind of problem spinning that on my piece of paper. But that was the latest tech at the time. High-tech rubber stamping gear, All right. Here's the old mill. Let's go with a little bit more ink here. My aunt sent me a homemade card when we found out my late husband wasn't going to make it. I needed a home care firm. I started stamping then. That's interesting, Patty. Wow. So your aunt was a stamper then. You hadn't seen anything, or did she make the homemade card via rubber stamping, Patty? I think a lot of users of rubber stamps in the 70s and 80s were teachers. A lot of teachers used rubber stamps, I guess. So I think like all night media, and I don't think it was necessarily rubber stampede. I thought it was all night media though. I could be mistaken about this, but I thought they had some different types of stamps that were really kind of aimed at the at that teacher, at the education market. I don't seem to recall too many people using stuff like all night media, like rubber stampers, hobbyists using all night media stamps. And you would never see like those big companies at a convention either. They were always selling to stores and chains, so it was all wholesale based. But I did see clear snap at a real early convention over at when I was working with a stamp in the hand over at Carson. All right, so let's see here. I'm going to use this in the foreground because I'd always use this one here. I always needed something kind of to add depth into my foregrounds. Since, I've used reeds a lot more. But a lot of times I would have something going on in the foreground and sky. I could have like a clouds or something like that going on. But there were two different areas right here. So we have surface and sky, and they didn't always seem to be as integrated as I wanted it to be. And remember, so we were doing things kind of minimally. So any kind of thing that you could do that would create a relationship between the different parts of a card or scene, in this case, was good. So if I had something that could run from the foreground, the midground, and the background like that, would be good because it would help to integrate the card a little bit more. But I didn't want to cover everything up where you couldn't see what was going on in the background. So this leafless limbs came in handy because it was real skeletal, and you can see through it into that background like that. All right. Over the years too, I mean, I started adding in things like gel pen dots on it, making it look like a whatever deciduous tree that was kind of, I don't know, whatever, coming around in the spring or something like that. Oh, let's see. Convention in Atlanta, Georgia. It was an heirloom show. Okay, yeah. I never went to that one, that convention. There was so you go to these different conventions, and like all of us vendors kind of knew each other, because you'd see, vendors, whatever, every couple months, or sometimes you'd see them not week. I didn't do shows weekly, but you'd see them at just all the different shows. So yeah, you get talking. Hey, what shows are you doing, or what shows did you do? Stuff like that. It was just small talk. Vendors weren't like hanging out with each other most of the time because, you're in town, it's just so hectic. You got to get everything unloaded, and then you're doing the show, you're setting up booth, and you're pricing things, etc. You might be flying into town or whatever, but just small talk for a couple minutes with each person. But there was some convention in Georgia in some sort of historical area, older area, and there was all these little shops along some street, and the convention or whatever event was that each shop kind of opened up space within their store for these booths, and I heard that one was really cool. But I think we've talked about that before in another live stream before. So I'm sure I mentioned it before. But that show, the vendors loved that one. You're not within eyeshot of any other vendors, but I think it was just kind of a cool kind of show for them to do. Just because it was so different. I don't remember when it was. Probably in the early 2000s, I'm taking a guess. Okay, this really needs something up here, talking about some cloud or something like. But this might be like a card, you know what I mean? Like a finished card back then, all right? But let's add in some additional texturing. I'm not sure what color to do it in, though. Let's try it in this deep lilac. Can't remember the last time I've used deep lilac to stamp any image out anywhere. Packed with people. Yeah, those heirloom conventions were pretty crazy. I've been to Georgia, I think twice. Um, One of them was for a CHA show, that's Craft and Hobby Association, which is a wholesale show for those that don't know. And I think that was the largest show of its type. It would usually it would travel around. It would be in different areas of the country. I don't know if it was every year, but it might be in the same city a couple times. Like I think it was in Anaheim like 2 or 3 years in a row or something like that. But one time it was out in Atlanta, and that was just an immense show. It might have been 2004 or so, I'm guessing. Um, but it was just so crazy. So many vendors and so many companies and booths, attendees at that center. It was just an enormous center. All right, so there is another scene like that. Um, no additional whatever texturing on it. Like I said, I can add in some. Here, let's do that right here. This is looking too plain to me in comparison to these days, but paint pens were available back in the 90s. We're stamping 90s style here, if you just kind of joined in here, or at least my 90s style of stamping with some of the stamps that were available in 94, the first Stampscapes whatever batch. All right, so just kind of highlighting some of these rocks in here like that, giving it a little bit of extra lighting. And I like following kind of the contours of some of the water. The water pattern is in the stamp itself, so there's these little lines in here, so I just kind of follow along with those patterns with the highlights right here. And then the highlights are typically going on the top side of objects. So in this case, it's rocks, like right here. Now, if this got colored in a little bit with some pink or something like that, I would add some highlights on there with the white, but white on white's not going to show up at all, so I'm just going to leave it like that. I would add in some highlights on my trees like that. I know I would back then, but I'll add on a couple right here, but I would always overdo it back then. And these days I might overdo it too, but I'm using white pigment ink over the top of it and kind of mellows it all out. But I'll resist using some the white pigment ink in this live stream, at least. There might be a follow-up live stream, because I know me. I mean, these going to be sitting on my desk right here for a couple days, and I'm going to look at them and think, they could use like some white pigment ink right back in here. Just some real simple little tweaks on these cards like that. All right, but anyways, there's two kind of general color schemes like that in here. This one's like just from whatever it was last month with those Northern Lights types of things that went on. All right, let's do one that's really dark right here. I want to do this scenario of these kind of guys going out fishing at night, maybe, or something of that sort. I did, like, there's certain scenes that kind of come back to me, all right, that I remember from a long time ago. And I don't know, maybe it's because I did them multiple times, but let's see. So I have boating fishermen here. Let's do this right up here. So I really did like those really violet-y toned scenes. Let's do something like that, and let's go with, okay, so I'll do this again. but I'll take it into those really dark tones this time. Hello, Megan. I started crafting to pass the time when I was out back in 2022. That's pretty cool, Sharita. Did you probably had some kind of notion in mind before that, like, hey, but you're just too busy or something like that? Or, but you kind of felt like doing some crafting? I have that tonal stamp and never knew what it was for. Yeah, a lot of people would have that same. I would get that same comment, even from people that were at like a convention and saw me use it, but they bought it, and then they got home and they didn't know what to do with it, And I was demonstrating it, but it's understandable that people go through. Back in the day, you're going through a show, and here's what people would do, okay? At their first convention, this is how it often went for people. Okay, they're kind of getting into stamping a little bit, or they have a local store, and they picked up some stamps there. And then there's a convention that they go to. Okay, I'm going to go to, yeah, there's a show. Yeah, let's go check it out. And then, I hope you can hear me over the, with this tapping going on. But they go to the show, and then there's like, oh my God, there's a gazillion people here. And then they're walking around, and then there's demonstrations at all the different booths. And a lot of times it's of things that they hadn't seen done before, new products, there's new companies or different companies, different applications of stamp, different accessories, etc. You got embossing going on. So a lot of times, people weren't taking like video at the time. They might have thought to bring a camera, but usually not. It'd be a film camera. I'm talking about way early days, of course. And then they might have picked up some things, but by the time they got home, they don't even remember how to use like half of it. And especially something like this, But that's why we had the make and takes going too, so that people can get some, like muscle memory down, so I knew that people. But a lot of times there just wasn't time, They had, they sitting and doing make and takes, but they would typically, a lot of times people went to those shows, and they went on Saturday, and it's like, okay, I wasn't planning on it, but I'm coming back tomorrow. On Sunday, so it's like, might have had other plans or something like that, but they gotta go back there again, And the instructions for something like this too, the tonal applicator, I had these, I don't know if I was printing them out, but it was in the catalog though. But it was like this 2-page explanation, just trying to explain this and then tapering it in like that. You know what I mean? That's just that simple little thing that I can show here in like a couple seconds, It's like a 2-paragraph, I don't know, whatever, 12-point font, written thing. So kind of explaining how to transition through other colors and stuff like that. It's became like this, like a full page type of, kind of explanation. But fun times though, definitely. Stamp the Cloud came. Yeah. It did look like it was already stamped out there, huh? Close to my heart. Dots. Okay, got it. But Stampin' Up though, that just started. Stampin' Up was just Stampin' Up from the beginning, huh? Yeah. Then there. What was that other one? There was Close to My Heart. There was Stampin' Up. Wasn't there one more of those companies. And close to my heart, did they start making their own stamps too? Because I knew another manufacturer that used to supply, actually it was something like the tonal applicator. It really wasn't. It was just this one general texture stamp. But by Printworks, and Printworks used to, they said they sold a gazillion of those to, I think it was Dots though, that they were selling that to. Is Printworks still out there? They were one of the first companies that had their own line of pads. Okay, there's blue right there. Let's go with this violet right here. This violet is starting to fall apart. I don't know if I want to use that one. That one's kind of flaking on me. All right, here, I better clean this off. This pad looks like really pure. I don't mind going in and taking other colors into similar colors, but you know, we'll never have another new rose pink pad, I don't think. I don't know. There's some colors that are still available out there. Marco's Papers still has some Marvy pads. I think it was like A1 or something like that. Or there's some kind of like website out there that has a bunch of Marvy still too. Okay, we're gonna use a lot of this in here. Because I want to go fairly dark on this one. Although I kind of like the colors that are in here like that. It's almost like, I mean, this is glossy cardstock, but it almost has like a chalk or pastel-ish look to it. So I'm going into some of this white area just to get some of that pure, kind of warm pink color. I'm going to have to use more of this rose pink in here. That would make for a good kind of sunset color scheme. All right, that is that. Let's go with the number 10 blue. Let me check that out. Okay, the 10 blue looks pretty good. I was going to say this is a really old pad right here, but it looks like it's holding up pretty good. Yeah, it's really dark in comparison to the other tones. You know, speaking of like an older area or something like that, you know, kind of like an antique area with a bunch of little gift stores. If you just joined in, we were talking about conventions, and I was mentioning this one convention in Georgia that the vendors really like. But I was under the impression that it was like a historic area, you know, where it's a bunch of cool little shops and stuff. But in Folsom, everyone says, I taught in Folsom. They think, oh, you taught at the prison? I didn't teach at the prison, you know. There's a city there, too. You know, in California. But there's this one kind of older area there. And there wasn't enough space in the store for the workshop, so there was this, like, open area, like, I don't know, where they warehoused stuff or something like that. And we taught in there, but it was right above an antique store. And we had, well, I don't know, like 15 people in there or something like that doing this. And it's an old building or something like that. So that guy came up from that store and said, "Hey, you know, what's going on? You know, it's, I'm in my store and it's like, you know, things are, I got this pounding going on in the ceiling." So people were probably going like this before. So I just, what we going to do, you know? I just said, okay, everyone just kind of go like that instead. You know, with your tonal applicator. Maybe one way it came out a little bit more feathered, you know, looking in terms of like an application. Maybe the other way would have been more kind of like expressionistic looking or something. I don't know. All right, I got that right there. If I didn't mention it, this is like definitely one of those situations where you really want to have your body and wrist and everything like that in a nice ergonomic position, you know, for this type of repetitive motion. So right now, I mean, I feel a little bit in my wrist, but I'm just kind of like barely raising this up. You know, it's not like going like this, and I'm not using like pressure on there. It's just like this. I can do it with 2 fingers if I wanted to, like that, and that's going to be as effective as going like this. You know what I mean? So you might as well just, you know, just use a lighter touch. You know, unless you want to get some aggression out or something like that too, and it's good for that. All right, let me see here. Let me see if I have another dark violet of any sort in here. Okay, this is kind of going, this is not kind of within that color scheme exactly. I didn't realize just in certain color ranges, I just don't have the pads to utilize something like this. I might have to just dip into the paper towel thing, but let's try the sweet plum on here, and let's just see if we can get a little bit darker in here. Let's see. She purchased the card, and when I saw it, I thought I could do that. Oh, that's interesting, Patty. Start out with printing pics, online color, cutting, then started shopping for stuff. Interesting that that was the impetus for the cards there. I haven't heard that one before. You know, a lot of times people would know if they, you know, someone that got into stamping or something like that. Hello, Darlene. How are you? Okay, that's getting quite a bit darker right there. Ooh, that's a pretty good color. It doesn't look plum at all, though. It looks like a different blue, though, huh? So this is the tonal applicator right here, which is just a bunch of dots. We're stamping. We're stamping Stampscapes, mid '90s style. If anyone just joined in here. If people have questions about, you know, sometimes, you know, as I'm doing this, they jump online. They think, hey, what are you using to apply that color with? Well, people are really gonna, if they jump in here, they're thinking, what the heck is this right here? And you can see that plum right in there now. Okay. I'm kind of surprised at how much this, I didn't think this sweet plum was very dark at all. I don't think it is, but, I don't know. I guess it's a middle toned 55-60% color. But over the top of these other ones, it's really pretty dark. Okay, so we're just getting these backgrounds like this. And like I said again, I taught things 2 different ways in terms of sequencing. I would start them off by stamping a scene out. Okay, especially if if they had a sky stamp that they were using in the mix, so they would stamp out, you know, like something like the old mill or something like that. Then if they were stamping lightning up here or something like that, then they could add their tones in around that lightning bolt and not tone out the lightning so that it stands out nice and light in a scene. Or if there was a moon in here, you can't stamp a moon over that because all those colors are going to be right in the moon. So we would stamp out those imagery first, and then we would color in after it in this type of, technique. So a lot of the one of the big questions I always had over the years was, do you do the backgrounds first, or do you stamp out the scene first and then color it in? Well, you can do it like either way, I would say. And it would depend on kind of the look you're going after, and if you wanted to really retain the light areas of some of your designs, then you would have to stamp it out first and then color it around it so that you can retain areas of lightness. And also, some stamps just work whether you stamp them first or after everything too. Like this stamp right here, if I wanted those rocks to all remain nice and light, then, I might want to stamp them out first. But if it doesn't really matter too much, like this card in the background, this one was a good one to go with for that. I call it kind of, I don't know what I call it, silhouetting or something like that. Just, throwing a silhouette type of stamp over the top of a background. I'll call it something like that, though. All right, so Lakeside Cove, large, right here. We have that space on the outsides like that. Some people just leave it like that, and it becomes like a little island. I tend to fill it in, or extend the sides out from side to side. I really like using the Pines and Rock stamp, but the Pines and Rock stamps didn't come out, I don't know, maybe until 2 or 3 years after this first batch of Stampscapes stamps. I'm overlapping, by the way, about 1/4 inch or so. You can overlap like 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 inch. I turned it upside down like this because I just have easier access to this side of the image over here. And then when you do that, and you have this seamless overlap right here. I mean, if I look really close, I can probably tell where that goes, but you always want to overlap adequately so you don't get this gap in between all of your different imagery that you want to be connected. Okay, so, there's plenty of leeway in there. Even if you went over like 1/2 inch, that would be fine. But remember, they're designed to be overlapped like that, so I have these transition areas off to the side in the way that stamps are designed with that overlapping in mind. Okay, let's see. Let's do this right here. Boating fisherman. If they're out fishing, it's probably early morning. It'd probably be good to give that a little bit of a warm glow, maybe if it's an early morning type of thing. Or I guess it's a sunset too. Okay, let me wipe off the edge just like I do with sky imagery before I stamp it out. This does have this surrounding area of tone, which I needed because there's kind of ripples in this. So if you don't have some texturing out there, you can't see the ripples, unless you do them in black, but I wanted them kind of reversed out. All right. And let's go. Let me use a little bit of I'm going to put a little bit of this ledgy type of rock right here. I would have done it right across here, but that's a little bit low here, so let's do this. This stamp right here is 054F, so that one was out in that first release of stamps. I just barely got a little bit of it right here, but this kind of reiterates what's going on the other side with the rocks like that. So this kind of puts us as a viewer up on a kind of this rocky, you know, whatever area, looking down into the lake. And let's see here. Let's go with a little bit of a spruce. I would go with my, again, the pines and rocks, or probably the pine that's a little bit more airy than this kind of more solid one, but this is what I had at the time. So I'm just kind of framing off this area right in here. About like so. And I have a whole video on this stamp, plus a few others, talking about impression pressure. Some people, if you haven't done like scenic stamping before and you're going like big stamps and then you're working small, I usually work from large to small, just kind of in general. I mean, I added that down and I added, you know, the larger tree after that, but your foundation stamps are the ones that you're usually stamping first in scenes. You know what I mean? If you have some big stamp, it's just easier to stamp it, you know, in the beginning, and then fill in with smaller stamps around it. It's like if you're packing for, you know, a trip or something like that, or storing a bunch of stuff in your closet. You generally start with the larger things first, right? I mean, it doesn't always have to be that way, but when stamping large stamps, you're kind of using a certain amount of pressure on your imagery. But when you get into like small stamps like this, and this is like the perfect example of it because it's the most, there's the least amount of surface space on this stamp than just about any other Stampscape stamp. So sometimes people use the same amount of pressure, and it's more like this kind of blobbier thing. Now, this paper really absorbs a lot of ink too really fast, but if you're doing it on, you know, a piece of more sealed, you know, cardstock or something like that, you might get some of that ink squeezing out around the edges as well, as, you know, as opposed to getting absorbed. So just nice, you know, even pressure on things. Adjust your pressure depending on the size of the stamp. And one of the other things too, if you have a lot of kind of ink on here that might still be a little bit damp, this one's not going to be because this dries really fast being applied with the tonal applicator in these dots. But if I'm doing this with the way that I do it now, I get a much thicker slathering of ink in here. So stamping this over the top of like an area like that, these days I might have a lot more ink underneath it. So you might be stamping kind of a wet stamp into a damp surface. So, you know, be mindful of that too. And that, you know, just so it doesn't like squeeze out on the side or something like that. But anyway, there's another piece right here. There were, like I said, paint pens available back in the day, white ones. It was white and then the metallics like the silver and gold paint. Oops. Refocusing here. Yeah, the silver and gold pens were around too. But that was basically it as far as paint pen colors. And then the gel pens came out later. But then the gel pens, you know, for years were whatever. They didn't have that that technology down yet. So you got a lot of paint pens that clogged up very quickly. if they worked at all. All right, so anyways, a little bit of highlights on those rocks like that, but I don't want to zoom in anymore. Yeah, it seems like it's got a few little lighting highlights on the water, maybe. About like so. People would be coloring in kind of like additional tones on their rocks like that, usually with some little plumes or tombos. And I don't know if, I think I might have had a few of those pens, but not too many. But they were all dye-based ink pens, okay? People didn't start using those. Like Copic markers, that was like, does anyone remember when Copic started really kind of showing in force? Was that around 2000 or so? Two, ish, 2000-ish, right? Early 2000, 2001 or 2002 or something like that. But that's when like those started showing up. And then I saw Copics at one of the first CHA shows. They had a booth over at the Anaheim show. And that, I don't know if that could have been 90s. I don't remember now. But I think I was at that Anaheim show with my client from, I didn't display at the CHA shows, by the way. I was just attending them. I might be demonstrating for someone like Ampersand Art doing stamp board at the time, but I'd usually just be walking around the shows with a client of mine from Hawaii, one of my customers, and she would just get me an extra pass, and I'd walk the show with her and her crew. Thanks, Patty. Will the Fountain of Light be restocked? Oh, is that still out, Darlene? I there were certain stamps that I wasn't sure if I was going to put those back into production. I don't know if enough people wanted it, I would restock it. But I'm not sure if I think it was the Fountain of Light. There were certain designs that were kind of kind of a little bit more obscure ones, and I wasn't sure because the plates, if my rubber guide didn't have it made into a mold yet, that mold is really expensive. So you have to sell, I don't know, a certain number of stamps just to make up for the cost of the plate. Not the plate, but the mold. So I don't know, I'll take a look at that one and see what the status of that one was there, Darlene. Yeah, I wasn't aware that the Fountain of Light was whatever. I think I generally say out of stock because I wasn't quite sure if I was discontinuing or not. But if you have a chance, drop me an email too, just to remind me of that one, or so I know how to get in touch with you. Oh, Candy, you have the tonal. It's called the Field of Sky. So there was an earlier version of the tonal applicator, okay, and it was called Field of Sky. I might even have it in a catalog here from a Stamp in the Hand company. But it accompanied these stamps called Field of Snow and I don't know if it was called Field of Lightning. Where is it? I don't know. I don't know if it was, they might have discontinued it at this point in time. I'm looking at the Stamp in the Hand catalog, right? These aren't all my designs, but here's some of the first nature designs right here of mine from a Stamp in the Hand. Wait, this is taking me back. I don't know. I don't know. It might have been in here. This is after I left them. Oh no, yeah, here it is right here. So there's Field of Lightning, Field of Snow, and then there's Field of Sky. So that's the one that Candy has right here. Field of Sky. So I think so. This is like the first reverse kind of imagery type of stamp. I think that was out there in the rubber stamping market. I always saw, bolts of lightning as like it almost looks like lightning kind of look like this. So if you stamp it out, it's going to be some darker thing on top of white paper. But I always thought, well, lightning should be like the lightest thing in the sky. But if you just stamp this out, it's going to be this isolated thing like this, and with all this white area around it. So we needed to be able to fill it in. So this is all made of tots. So I came up with that right there. But this is what I was mentioning to people. See, there was like dots on the outside here that are nicely tapered. But in rubber stamping form, those dots, because the way that you press a mold and then you press the rubber into the mold like that, these isolated dots get bigger. So instead of tapering out with these fine little dots like that, it went out and the dots got bigger, and then you're stamping it, so all these things got bigger on the outside, which was kind of the opposite of what I wanted there. So anyways, I mean, it worked though, but and then I made, so like I said, I made this kind of a uniform application of dots, and then this little nosy thing right here. So those things like that, that's the exact size of the dot. I didn't do it larger than reduce it, so I must have had good or reasonably decent hand-eye coordination back in those days with really good eyesight. Because you couldn't have two dots touching each other either. Otherwise it would look like a blob. So anyway, early stamp the hand design. See my water patterns right here? They were really big, and I mean, they worked and everything like that, but I reduced it down because I had much smaller areas to get the water into, like this right here. So something like this, or even this one, would be a little bit too large for in there. So speaking of that, I was going to use this water stamp right here. I was going to show you guys this. If I had, I don't know, some time here, but let me do something with this one right here. So see how this is darker out here and lighter on the inside, like that? Let's try to zoom in as close as we can here. Okay, so you add kind of darker impressions out here. It's not super, this isn't really super dark. It's a medium tone blue. But in the darker areas, you add a stronger impression. Okay, but see, this is really light in here, so let me blot that off right there. So it's a drier version. Or you can go with a lighter color too, like a violet or something, like a pale violet. And I had one around here somewhere, but I'm just going to go in here like that. So see that blue, in this case, right in here, is much lighter in the light area. And then you have the darker blue, the more wet one, okay, or when you ink it up, it's nice and wet, so it's going to leave the darkest impressions. So you get those darker impressions in the dark and lighter impressions in the light. You can change colors too. It doesn't have to be like one color, just, in different incarnations of dampness or something like that. But that's the way I use that. And then if it got really dark out here, you might actually have to add in some black impressions of it in the darkest of areas. But right in here, it didn't get like super dark. So yeah, over here, it's a little bit dark. I don't know if like this will even show up in here. Yeah, it does a little bit like right in there. But see, like that, it turns the water a little bit more shimmery when you use the values that are already down there. So you can do this ahead of time, and you can do it darker, darker, lighter, lighter like that, and then tone in around it, or you can just stamp it, tone in everything in the background first, and then you can see, okay, how dark is it? And that'll be how dark you apply this. Now, sometimes if you don't know, then just blot it off and do a little comparison. Now, if you go from here to here, it's going to be lighter than this one, but you can test it out, ink it up, blot it off, and then go for the second impression and see how dark it is. So the next time you go, if it's the value you want, then ink it up, blot it, and then just take it right in there too. And you do it in a color. out of your color scheme. So if this is like warm sunset tones or something like that, reflecting in the water, then do this in colors that are kind of, reflecting those colors in the sky. But anyways, those are some tones, these are some scenes like this. They're really, I don't know, to me, the difference between these ones like this that look pretty primitive to me, I don't know if they look, I guess they do. I guess they look unfinished to me with what I would be doing now. But the difference between these ones and what I would be doing now isn't, vast in terms of this technique right here. I would add in, with some alcohol inks, I would tone in here, and I would probably add in some kind of brownish tone like I just did fairly recently. In here, maybe that same thing too. I'd give that a real rustic look. I would add in some tone right on the vertical sides of the mill, and then I would have it lighter on the top, maybe with a little bit of color. And then same thing down here is shadows kind of in the rocks, and I would give the rocks kind of a stronger sense of highlighting. I would add in some shadow work along the base of the rocks on the far shoreline like that, just kind of enriching the entire look. Overhanging tree limbs or something like that in here. But okay, so the biggest thing though, if I retain some areas of white, like right in here and right around in here, maybe a little bit in here, I would add in the white pigment ink into these. And that, for me, would really expand on the textural range of these pieces. They're kind of, that has a soft look to it, but it looks much softer and mistier with the white pigment ink applied, just with the cotton ball on there. So maybe I'll do that. I'll do another video sometime. So if you guys want to see some tweaks on this, if you're around online, or if you want to see the replay of it, check it out, and you can see that. And maybe what I should do is I shouldn't do it in the live stream, so that I can do like a transition. I'll show this, and then how you do that thing with it, and then you transition it with the new changes, so you can see the difference between the two of them with just a little, some little bit of a shading, and it's lighting, but it's also texturing tweaks with the white pigment ink, white brilliance ink in this case. But anyway, let's see here. Creative Memories, was that other home party company, Linda? Was that what you were referring to there? There was a company, the Angel Company. Oh yeah. That sounds familiar too. Yeah. I forgot that there was a company called the Angel Company, because that was like a definition for just all companies that allowed people to use stamps in their hand stamped goods for resale. They would call it an Angel Company, which I always thought was kind of weird, because what is that? So it's an Angel Company, so it's like anyone that doesn't allow it's like the Devil Company. But I forgot there was a actual company calling that. If you see Marvy online, call first. Online site up to date. Many do not keep the online site up to date. I was sent like as substitute. Oh yeah. So that's that company, right, Candy? What's the name of that company that did that? I contacted them. I'm pretty sure we're talking about the same company. Yeah, where they were just sending substitutes for a certain type of ink. I told them, hey, you can't do that, because I'm referring people over to you guys to get the Marvy brand of something, so if you just send out, without even, but they told me that they said that they did contact, but I don't know. I heard from a couple of people that just said, hey, I got some stuff that I didn't order, but they just sent out like the substitute for it. I told them, it's not really going to work. And I think one of my customers got sent something. I think it was a different incarnation of an ink, but it was like a black ink, but it wasn't even the same type. It wasn't like even dye-based ink or something like that. But yeah. So if you guys order some Marvies from places, unless there's like a count like quantity 3 remaining or something like that, you might want to just or if there's a note section, just say cancel or do not substitute or something like that, or they're not gonna have back orders because it's not being made anymore. Bye, Mark. I'm glad you liked the sky texture, Linda. It was kind of interesting, huh? It's the paper. So the different papers have different texturing on them too. That's what I found when I tested out 3 different types of Marvy inks from I mean, not Marvy inks, but 3 different glossy cardstocks from Kelly Paper. They were cool with me just taking samples of all their different glossies. And I think I took 3 or 4 of them. I did a video on it, but one of them had that kind of texturing on there like that. I didn't think the chrome coat did, but I wasn't using the tonal applicator on it though. Oh, thanks so much, Cynthia. Back to 1993 here, yeah. So like I said, I said, okay, when I do this one, I'm going to resist getting the temptation for using other things, stamps and media that I didn't have back then. But this is often, kind of what the pieces looked like back then. It was just glossy, you know what I mean? It was glossy cardstock and just the dye-based inks like that, with very little additional accessories on it. I'm trying to think of what other people added in, glitter, stuff like that. Maybe not into scenes, but I don't know. There were things like star and heart punches, that people would be doing on like gift tags, that size of a stamped incarnation. But hello, Donna. Yeah, so Janice, yeah. So that being said, people can do things like if you haven't done, like I'm doing a lot of multimedia these days, but this is kind of the foundation for it here. But I've mentioned this before too. Like everything out of Germany at this time, like in the mid 90s to 2000 or so, you might stamp out the same compositions, but it was all on matte paper. And it might have been good paper too, like art papers or something like that, but they all used colored pencils on them. So you gotta get this look, with all these different tones in here. But it was like things like this stamped out and just colored in with colored pencils, a lot of layered colored pencils on there. So probably some sort of like cold press, not super textural, not like a watercolor paper or something like that, but like a cold press paper or cardstock or something like that. I don't even know if they were doing cardstock out there. They might. That's why I'm kind of leaning towards, them using like a cold press art paper or something like that. The ones that come in like a pad or something like that. Because a lot of the things internationally too, especially, they didn't have access to the crafting media, so the art supplies were always available. So you see people using in other countries things like chalks and pastels and again the colored pencils, just in traditional applications, but just using stamps with them, and then I don't know. That's changed like around 2000. Probably you started having there was probably distributors in all these other countries for some of the traditional stamping media, pads and everything like that. So anyway, back to the 90s here. How did that become, so many decades ago? But yeah. all of these little things like this. I wasn't even using cotton balls, so that's not in the mix right here. Oh, and the pad not in the mix either. And pads either, but I wasn't going to color up my tonal applicator with a pen, you know. Plus, I don't have like a ton of pens anymore anyway. Just a few colors, but yeah. So if you want to take a trip back in time, if you have that tonal applicator or something like that, or you can use like a Nerf ball or something like that to add in your inks, you know, like this sponging little thing like that. You can give that a try, and I don't know, maybe you get a kick out of it. I was thinking, I don't know if there's anything that, you know, that I'm taking from it, you know, practicing with the tonal applicator here, but I am surprised at just kind of the rate at which a lot of these inks went down there. I thought, I don't know, I was thinking the paper towel is probably a lot faster, and it is faster, but I don't know, the tonal applicator, I don't know, it didn't take too long at all, especially with pads though. Like I said, if I had to keep inking this up with my pen, that took, you know, that took a little bit of time back then, so. Anyway, fun stuff. Thanks for joining me in this little, I don't know, trip back in time here. I'll do some other types of minimal things like there, you know, some of these more basic looks, you know, coming up here. I was thinking about just doing some compositions, stamping out the clouds in blue or something like that, and just adding in some colored pencil work or something like that. I always love the colored pencil look too, but maybe I'll actually do it on some matte paper. I've been using semi-gloss cardstock that doesn't take the colored pencils real well, but it's because I'm using those colored pencils in conjunction with the dye-based inks and alcohol inks or something like that, just so I can do multimedia. But maybe I'll try something with just colored pencils sometime. So I'll use a paper that's more conducive for layering of the, you know, multi-layered colored pencil work, and we'll see how that goes. But yeah. All right, so fun stuff here. Trip back in stamping time, that is. Yeah. So there's your challenge there for everyone. Now, for Sharita, it's not going to be any big deal. But if I say, all right, stamp out some kind of card as a challenge with only the things that you had in that, like maybe that first year of stamping or something like that. We can see what you guys come up with. You're not allowed to use, you know, anything else. Wouldn't that be funny? All right. Thanks again, Cynthia, for the super chat. And thanks, everyone, again, for jumping in and checking this out on that, the Fountain of Light. Whoever asked me about that one, I could scroll back up and see. But I'll check and see what the mold status is for that image. All right, folks, have a great rest of evening.